New from Ranger, another amazing Tim Holtz product, Distress Oxide ink pads. Okay, this is like no other ink that you've seen before. You can use it in every way that you would use Distress inks, and I have those right here. And the Distress inks match the same colors of the Distress Oxide inks, and these are the mini Tim Holtz Distress inks, but they come in the same colors as what you see here. There are 12 different colors, but Distress Oxide ink is a fusion of water-reactive dye and pigment ink, and it creates an oxidized or kind of a chalk-like effect when spritzed with water, but it doesn't feel chalky. So I'm going to show you that right away. Let me just move these out of the way. Oh, wait a minute, I want to show you all 12 colors. There is fired brick, spiced marmalade, broken china, peeled paint, vintage photo, faded jeans, walnut stain, iced spruce, worn lipstick, wilted violet, cracked pistachio, and fossilized amber. So we have 12 of the Distress Oxide colors, and each of these has a corresponding Distress ink that is available so that you can mix and match, you can use them together and get some really interesting effects. Now I'm going to push these out of the way because I'm just going to deal with these 4 that you see here and show you some fun examples. So bring in my craft sheet. And I want to show you first the difference between a Distress Oxide ink and the Distress ink. So Distress ink, I'm going to scoot it here onto my cardstock. A Distress ink is a dye and it's translucent. So you're going to be able to see through it. And it is also a water-reactive. We already know that. It's a water-reactive dye. And pigment ink, like I was saying, is a pigment ink is not translucent. It is more of a solid look to it. And when I use the oxide ink, which is a fusion of the dye and the pigment ink, you're going to get this it's much less see-through. And it gives, actually when it's dry, it gives a chalky finish. So the Distress, it also gives you a little bit more of a vivid color. And these are the same colors. These are both wilted violet, but this one is with the Distress Oxide and this is with the Distress ink. So when it's dry, you can see that, I actually turn them over. Let me turn them over. When it's dry, the Distress is still darker, but it doesn't have that chalky, it's sort of a satin finish to it that the Distress Oxide has. So let me scoot those away and show you some other little demos that I already prepped here. So when you're stamping with a dye ink, you're going to be able to see through. So I've stamped first on this cardstock, and then I used a dye ink just over that so that you can see, you'll see it through. And then a pigment ink, it's much harder to see through. You can really cover it well if you put several layers of pigment ink. Now fuse those two together and you get a Distress Oxide. So you can still sort of see it through a little bit, but you can see that that chalk is sitting on top of it. It's like a chalk layer, but it doesn't have a chalky feel to it. It's just kind of a satiny chalk look, which I really like. The other thing I like about, and here's my next sample here, of the oxide inks versus the Distress inks. And I love Distress inks because you can keep working with them, you can add water to them, but they don't stamp. We might have to get a little closer. There we go. They don't stamp quite as clearly as the Distress Oxide does because it's got that pigment in there. It's going to give you a more solid color printing. So that's a really nice effect. Another great thing is that you can use these on a dark background. So it's going to be real easy to stamp something on dark paper. They work great on dark, they work on kraft, they work on white just as well, as you've already seen. So here's cracked pistachio, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that just like that. And so you can see it right away. So this is a nice look. Now if I used the cracked pistachio Distress ink, which is, we know we can sort of see through it, it's a little more translucent than the oxide ink. I'm inking up my stamp here. The Distress ink on black cardstock, here's the look you're going to get. You're not really going to be able to see it very much. That's what's nice about the Distress Oxide, and they're really great for blending too, and even blending on black cardstock. So I'm going to do this right off the edge here. I love the halo that you get right away. Really easy to blend on black cardstock. So that's another benefit of the oxide inks, and I just love that about these inks. I just think that they're really fun to work with. Another kind of a fun thing, I stamped that a little bit ago and I let it dry, and then when you spritz it with water, see if I can get this to go, just a light spritzing, you don't want it too heavy, you can sort of see that color just pick up. Can you see it change and become just a little bit brighter? Just a little bit of spritzing and it picks the color right up. Almost makes it glow a little bit. And I just think that's a really impressive thing too. And what's nice about it is that now if I keep spritzing, I'm going to use the one that's just a little bit, I'm going to try this one too. If I keep spritzing, the color is going to sort of seep out from underneath, so you can see that glow now. If I keep going, the color starts to fade out from underneath, but you can still see that printed image on top. And I love that about the oxides. Now, that's just a great way of using them. I think that's a pretty neat technique. All right, I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna clean this off a little bit. I'm gonna show you something else. So here's something that you may have seen in Tim Holtz, or actually everybody's kind of doing this demo now, just to show you what Tim Holtz has been showing everybody. I've got worn lipstick here. I'm going to make a little strip of that right onto your craft sheet because these are great for backgrounds, just the way Distress inks are. You can use these just the same way as you can use Distress inks. It's just that you're going to get different effects when you use them. So worn lipstick, wilted violet, cracked pistachio, that's my personal favorite combination of all of these colors. There's a lot of great colors. And then I'm going to spritz that until I see little water droplets on there. It's really going to pick up the water. And then I'm going to take my cardstock and just start picking up. You might want to back up a little bit so we can see the full effect here. I'm just going to start picking up color and pick up a little more of that green, whatever color you want. And then a little more of that worn lipstick there. Then when you dry that, and let me move these a little bit. Now I'm going to start drying that. And it's going to sit in place. I'm going to hold that down so you can see that. While it's going, I'm going to spritz it with a little water because the water makes it react again. If you can see that in the corners. The little droplets make it react. So as you're drying it, you can get little spatters of water on there. And it still has that light, sort of a pastel-y, chalky finish. And if you want to add more colors, you can do that. So you've got that on there. Now if I was using Distress inks and I started to add more colors on there, it might start to get a little muddy because you can see through. But because these are the oxide inks, you can add different colors on top of them, and they tend to sit on top. And it's because of that pigment base that's in there. The colors sit on top, so you can actually layer colors with this. I'll go ahead and pick up yellow. And it pretty much stays yellow and sits on top of there, and you can dry it again. And that's another one of the fun things, that chalk look, it doesn't come off, it's perfect for layering, it's not going to get muddy as you're layering. I even like to spritz it a little bit with water, get a few more of those droplets. So that's just really fun. I love that look. And you can do this on kraft cardstock, you can do this on black, lots of different looks, and I'm going to show you some more samples here that I've already done. So with these, here it is with those, with the pink and the purple and that cracked pistachio, just beautiful sort of pastel-y look. And then here it is, just layers on layers. And what I have here I'm going to pull this aside, is two samples. The one on the left, if we back up and see both of them together, the one on the left is Distress inks. And you see, as you're laying, as I added that last layer, that yellow, it started to meld into the other two colors, and so you start getting a little bit more of a muddy look. But this one, it stays yellow on top. And it also gets that chalky finish, but it does stay yellow, and it has kind of a vintage, a rustic look to it. Maybe, I'm not sure about rustic. It is a beautiful look. And then I went around the edge with some of the vintage photo, so such nice combinations of those colors. And I love that. They call it oxidation when it sits on top, when it when it changes color with the water. So that's a great look. And here's something that you can do with it. So I did several different things on this card. We're going to start with that background. It's black cardstock. And I started by stamping, and you can see that nice stamped image, and then I blended around the edges to get that nice halo. You can still see the black cardstock in the center. And then I did a background piece that I laid back behind all of these pieces, just the way I was just showing you. I just layered those colors, spritzed it with a little water, dried, layered again, and you can really get some amazing looks back there. And then on this one, this is a brown StazOn that I used. I stamped those in the background, and then I stamped with the Distress inks right on top of it and spritzed with a little water, and you get that beautiful glow. So I love the crisp, solid images you get with those stampings too. So you can really add a colorful vintage look. You can add a weathered effect. This is so different. This is really not like any other ink, and I'm just having a lot of fun with it. And they match up with those Distress inks just perfectly. So you can get the matching Distress inks and really have a lot of fun with the new Distress Oxide ink pads from Ranger and Tim Holtz.